afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to this week's episode of Spurs Up. I'm Jack Taylor.
And I'm Matt Pumbaka.
And we're here this week with Bradley Fasulo. He is a pre-med major here at the University of South Carolina and one of the captains of the club rugby team. Now, Bradley, being a student athlete, tell us what sort of commitment goes into playing with the club rugby team.
Well, so the club rugby team, it's a club team, so obviously it's gonna ask a little bit less than varsity teams would. But we practice 2 hours a night on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And that's just general, skill practice, like actually getting and playing rugby. But then on Mondays and Wednesdays, we'll usually have a 1 hour conditioning session.
Okay.
So, just try and get a workout in, get a run in, obviously keep all the guys in shape.
And you're traveling pretty much around the area, playing other teams in the SEC conference.
Yeah, so exactly. So we're in the SEC conference, even though we are a club team. So we'll travel as far as Mississippi. We've traveled to Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia, Florida, just all around the SEC.
Yeah, and with traveling all around the SEC, how hard is it juggling, playing with the club rugby team and being a pre-med student here at USC?
At times, it can definitely be difficult. My time management skills, I've really kind of honed ever since I got here, just playing with rugby and being in such a high intensity major.
Yeah.
But it's definitely easier than it might be for a varsity sport because everybody on the team and the coaches as well understand that we're students first and the importance of school. So if you need to miss a practice, you can.
And the coaches they're volunteering their own time, correct?
They're not employed by the university, but they're volunteering their time to come help us out. So.
Now, being a part of a club team, you're not technically a student athlete, but you still have to handle yourself the way a student athlete does. Do you think it's as rigorous in terms of things like social media and things you say and the way you handle yourself?
I would say it's as rigorous. I think one of the big things is that when a varsity student athlete, when there's an incident with a varsity student athlete, a lot of times you'll see the student athlete themselves gets punished. But with a club team like ours, the entire club team is what gets punished. So if I were to act in a certain way that was detrimental to the club, they could suspend the entire club. Rather than just take action against me.
Yeah. And Bradley, what got you started playing rugby?
So my dad grew up in England, actually, and he played rugby when he was younger. So when I was in high school, he said, I really want you to play rugby. I think you'd love it, because I did wrestle for a little while. But I started playing it, and I said, this is the best sport I've ever played in my life. And here we are.
That's great. And so the University of South Carolina's rugby team, you said there's two. There's the 15s and the 7s.
Yes.
And the 15s, their season is in the fall?
In the fall, mostly.
And then the the spring semester is the 7s.
Yes.
The 7s are on a tournament in Tennessee right now.
Yes, they are.
And this is the SEC tournament?
Yeah, so this is the SCRC, and it's the Southern Conference Rugby Championship. And I know the past 2 years we actually won the SCRC and gained our berth into the national championship. It's called the Collegiate Rugby Championship, or CRCs.
And so how many teams do they normally have in the Collegiate Rugby Championship tournament?
I can't tell you off the top of my head, but it's probably somewhere around 30. It's pools of 4 teams. And there'll probably be about 6 or 7 pools.
And now, is that just club rugby teams, or is that some other different levels? Because there are varsity teams throughout, obviously the NCAA, but they're not as many as there would be.
Yeah, so that does include both club and varsity programs for rugby, and they're competing at the same level. So I know Clemson has a varsity program. They were in the CRCs last year as well. So we can compete against both club and varsity programs.
Now, what goes into a practice where you're going to play a varsity team? Is it a lot more strenuous than just preparing for a club team, or is it just the same thing?
It's really the same thing. It's like any sport. You just have to treat every single game like it's going to be a difficult game. You work yourself to try and you got to go out and win no matter what. So we don't really change it up. We just keep working.
Nice. Could you speak, since it is a club sport, could you speak to the philanthropy side of the club rugby team?
Yeah, so in the fall, we are pretty heavily involved in the blood drive. First and foremost, we try and get as many guys on the team as we can out to donate blood. But we're also involved in setting up and taking down the blood drive at the end of the week. And we'll put posters around campus as well. I don't know, sometimes we'll have banners out that we'll put up. But then in the spring, we are heavily involved with Relay for Life. And I know this year, I think we've raised somewhere around $1,500 so far, just for Relay for Life. So
that's great.
And then, so you're a senior pre-med major, and you're also on a club rugby team that does have a very vigorous schedule. Do you have time to do anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I do. It's tough to find time, but as a pre-med, I volunteer, I do research in a lab, but I find time because I love rugby and I love doing the other stuff that I do. Mm-hmm. It's definitely possible, and everyone on the team is really understanding about everybody else's schedules. Mm-hmm.
That's great. Where do you think this club rugby team could go in the future? What are the expectations for the team? Even this season, they're playing in the tournament in Tennessee right now.
Yeah, so...
do you think they could three-peat?
I think that it's definitely a possibility that we three-peat, and that's a huge focus right now, just because in order to get to the Collegiate Rugby Championship, which will take place in June, we have to win this tournament. Mm-hmm. So that's the big focus for right now. But I think just trying to get more players out, in the fall, having a dominant 15s team, that's a goal of ours. Be able to win the conference in the fall as well as the spring. Mm-hmm. Just try and win some games.
So then this tournament, this championship is for the 7-on-7. Do the 15 or the 17? Do the 15? Do they have their own SEC tournament?
In the fall.
Yes. In the fall, yeah. Okay.
So in the fall, it's less of a tournament,
okay,
just because the games are a lot longer,
mm-hmm,
and it'll take place over several days or several weekends. But there are games that are played for the championship in the fall.
Okay. Any chance you could see the rugby team becoming a varsity sport here at USC?
I think it's too soon to speak on that.
Okay.
I'm not entirely sure. I know over 2 years ago, we were able to successfully receive funding from the university to offer scholarships to certain individuals, help especially the out-of-state students afford tuition here so that they can play rugby with us. Mm-hmm. But as far as varsity goes, I'm not entirely sure, where we're going in that direction. But.
And then you've played all 4 years, correct?
Yes, sir.
What would be your favorite moment, if you have one, in playing for the rugby team?
Oh, man. There's a lot. But I don't know if I can speak to one moment, but I really just love the camaraderie. The guys, you're out there on the field literally putting your body on the line for each other. So just overall, the camaraderie is incredible. You get it in some other sports, but rugby's just special to me.
It's a whole different animal, right?
It's a whole different animal.
And then being the hooker, you're right in the middle of the scrum. Is there ever a time when you're there that you're like, why did I choose this position? Why did I choose this forward?
No, yeah. So, it happens sometimes because the scrum will collapse, and I'm completely powerless. So, I've got like 250-pound dudes bearing into me, and I'm just kind of laying on the bottom. Like, oh gosh.
What am I doing here? What
yeah, exactly. But, all in all, I'm happy with my position. I'm happy with the sport.
Awesome.
I love it.
Well, Bradley, thank you so much for coming on today and talking about club rugby. It's been a pleasure having you on.
Thanks for having me. It's been my pleasure.
And until next time, South Carolina, Spurs up.